and we're going to start back in the 1940s with Mr. Guillermo del Toro's new film, Nightmare Alley. Now, this film came out just for Christmas in the US.
Yeah.
Sadly, didn't particularly perform very well at the box office for a variety of different reasons, but we're not here to talk about that stuff. We're here to talk about the film itself. So, Linda, we've both seen it now. Linda, do you want to kick us off with this one? It's come with quite a lot of acclaim so far. Maybe not as much as acclaim as some of his previous films, particularly Shape of Water. But what was
surprisingly
your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised at the sort of lack of sort of award buzz around this, because I thought this was absolutely fantastic. So it's based on a 1946 novel. It's a kind of a psychological thriller / horror, and it's based on a 1946 novel, but it was made into a film all the way back in 1947, a film starring Tyrone Power, which I don't think many people know it, to be honest. But so the story is this: Bradley Cooper plays this down and out, down on his luck in Depression era America. He travels to sort of to deep, I think is it based in New Jersey or New York State somewhere, and he comes across this carnival show and Ron Perlman plays the owner of the carnival, who offers him a job as like just a handyman, and he gradually endears himself to the people around him. He endears himself to this medium played by Toni Collette and her husband, who is a mentalist who sort of knows how to sort of work the crowd and make them believe that he has abilities. Eventually, and Rooney Mara is the love interest. Eventually, he makes it big in the world and then moves to sort of the city, and he becomes a very famous medium, and comes across with Cate Blanchett's character, who is a psychologist who's got his number. Basically, that is more or less the story. So that's the crux of the story. I think I'm going to start by asking you what you thought of it first, and then I'll tell you what I thought of it.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. It still boggles my brain. You know, I'm not going to here to talk about the box office and stuff, but it still boggles my brain that I think the wrong thing I was going to say was probably wrong. I think if this had come out in a pre-COVID or non-COVID format, I think people would have flocked to have seen this, because I think obviously we talked about how Scream is very much for younger audiences. This is one of those similar to some of the ones that have been pushed back a few weeks, and that the slightly older audiences would have gone to see it. And I think it's such a shame that this and many others haven't performed as they would have performed at the box office. But that doesn't necessarily in this case at all reflect its quality. Its quality is astonishing in many ways. I found it too long, which I think was slightly to its detriment. However, I thought what it was and what it was trying to do and what it was trying to say was fantastic. And you know, people will see the title Nightmare Alley and assume, because it's Guillermo del Toro, that it might get a bit more sinister and a bit more kind of gothic and monstery than maybe it lets on. But this is very much a throwback to the fantastic noir films of the 40s and 50s that, when done right, can be really, really good. Can produce not only some great visual aspects, but great performances as well. And across the board, I mean, this ensemble is just on paper, this ensemble.
Amazing stuff, yeah.
Just insane. Yeah. And I think the combination of all of those things, the way Guillermo del Toro makes his movies and what he tries to say with his stories, and the performances. I mean, what's not to like? What's not to like with Nightmare Alley? I mean, it's just, it's fantastic. And I haven't seen the original, although I will say that it's just come out on Blu-ray. I know that from my day job. So if you wanted to seek it out after that, you now can, because I think it's been unavailable for a while. But going in blind and just watching it as a Guillermo del Toro film and what it's about, I thought it was terrific. And as I say, I think this would have been a pun intended monster hit had it been released at a different time. But hey, it's been a strange.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted at the lack of award buzz. I just can't get my head around it. I can't. I love this film. Loved it. And I think I loved it even more than The Shape of Water, because there are levels to it that Shape of Water is almost too obvious to work. It's sort of set in a sort of like McCarthyan era, and it's a bit too sort of, you know, heavy on the symbolisms. But this, I honestly cannot tell you how much I loved it. I thought Bradley Cooper was phenomenal. He played that character so brilliantly. This guy you don't really know too much about him, but there are little hints which I love. I think that's what I love about Guillermo del Toro's way of writing, because this is he wrote this in collaboration with someone else, and his way of writing of not making things too obvious. You know, there's a lot of nuance. So there's a sort of, you know, it's a film that doesn't take you for an idiot, that doesn't spoon feed you what you should be thinking about. And I just really loved, I love that juxtaposition between Depression era rural America, or sort of small town America, to sort of the opulence of the city and where he finds himself later. I was just and I loved Cate Blanchett. You know, it was so quite interesting.
So good.
Sorry, it was interesting seeing Rooney Mara and Cate Blanchett back in the same movie after Carol, and set kind of not too far away time-wise from each other. I just loved it. Yeah, maybe sorry, you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say Cate Blanchett is amazing in the film. Maybe it's set in some sort of alternate universe where they are in the background somewhere. They're in their level at the same time. I think it's great. I think the whole, like you say, the Depression era where people were pushed to do things to make ends meet and to do all that kind of stuff is kind of really taps into the kind of humanity of it all. You know, in desperate situations, what's the phrase from Mission Impossible? Desperate times call for desperate measures. And while that's very different in Mission Impossible, it's kind of apt for this, in that Bradley Cooper's character is bottom of the barrel kind of thing, and he's trying to work his way up and then finds a way to shall we say manipulate people with his wares, as he learns on the carnival scene. But I thought it was great, and it reflects into modern day in terms of how some people, not everybody, but some people perceive evangelists and people on TV that say they can cure you and this and that and everything else. It's part of the really reflects
snake oil salesman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what did you think of what do you think of it visually?
Visually, it's incredible. I mean, it's visually, it's very, very impressive. I know there's obviously a little bit of CGI enhancement in terms of the backgrounds and stuff, but I loved the carnival. I love the fact that the carnival was all like a real kind of, you're kind of immersed in this world, aren't you? This tiny little world. You get to the big city and you see things as they are in the 40s and 50s, which looks incredible. I mean, to replicate all of those things, not just with the help of CGI, but with the buildings and the costumes are incredible. I mean, it's just beautifully done, and there's some wonderful visual parts to the movie. I mean, all of it is pretty opulent and pretty beautiful, and there's not a lot you can say in a negative about the photography and the production design is all incredible, and the art design it's phenomenal.
Yeah, like I said, I am shocked and dismayed that this hasn't done as well as it should have done in America, and I'm really hoping that it might fare a bit better. But I think, isn't that a question of the distributor not making much out of it over here? I just felt like it wasn't really pushed for too much towards award season, which it's always a giveaway that a distributor doesn't really hold much. They don't think it's going to do well, so they probably hold it back a little bit. But I'm actually quite surprised, and I really genuinely I loved it. I think direction wise, this is Del Toro's one of his favorite, one of his best ones so far, and I am actually quite surprised that it did so badly. So yeah.
I don't know whether this is not my opinion. I'm just going by what some people say on social media about the not disparity, but how obviously it's changed since Disney bought Fox, and this is technically a Fox. It's Searchlight, isn't it? So it's technically Fox. So people have made the thing of whether Disney actually care about that stuff or not. I don't know anything about that. I'm not an expert in those things. I'm not going to say otherwise, but I think it's a shame that obviously in terms of box office, I mean, I don't understand, and this is just me being me. I think it had a wide release. Why would you release it wide the same weekend as Spider-Man: No Way Home? I don't understand that. I don't get
right, okay.
that. I don't understand.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, in the US, it came out the same day as Spider-Man: No Way Home, and I think it was a wide release rather than it would have been different if it just played in New York and Los Angeles, to build up momentum as these award films kind of do.
Yeah.
That would have made sense as a counter programming to.
Well, that's a sure sign that you have no faith in what you're releasing if you're releasing it at the same time as a juggernaut like Spider-Man, which is a bit sad, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess I saw it as being the counter programming for older audiences that weren't interested in Spider-Man. However, older audiences aren't quite going back to the cinema in the same way that they did 2 years ago because of how COVID affects older people. I guess I don't, that's part of it. But
Possibly.
Even releasing anything Spider-Man, even if you had a great film next to it, like this is, releasing any film next to Spider-Man: No Way Home when everyone's going to descend on Spider-Man: No Way Home was probably not the best move in the world. But hey, that's
anyway
off my playground.
Let's have our verdict, because we've got to move on to something else after this. So let's have our verdict. What will you give it out of 5?
A strong 4 stars. A very strong 4 stars.
Okay, I gave it 5 out of 5 in my review, and I stand by it. I don't care what anyone says. I think it's one of the best movies of the year, and I'm absolutely gutted for everyone involved in the film that more wasn't made out of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey